What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Aggie Nation Podcast, a special episode. We're going to recap Texas A&M's men's basketball season. The Aggies, of course, fell to Penn State in the first round of the NCAA tournament. We got Travis Brown up here. He's still in Iowa, up in Des Moines. Travis, has it got any warmer up there?
No, and in fact, it was snowing again a few minutes ago. Just kind of some wispy flakes, but it was cold. It was felt like 8 degrees last night, so chilly night. And the basketball was as bleak as the weather.
Yeah, I was going to say, a very bitter end to what really was kind of a surprising and successful season for A&M in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they got away from everything that they were good at this season. The way that they won games was they got to the rim with dribble penetration and some post-entry passes to Julius Marble and Henry Coleman. I believe it was 39% of their shots, their field goal attempts this season came at the rim, which was 9th in the country. Yesterday, they only had 8 shot attempts out of 59 at the rim. They just completely went away from that whole game plan, which if they don't make the shots, they usually draw fouls, get to the free throw line. They were first in the country in free throw attempts and free throw makes this season. And there was none of that. There was just a lot of 3-point shooting. I know a lot of people, if you look at the Twitter and the internet and the people complaining, it's a lot of talking about the game plan. And I think there was some to that. But if you looked at the way that Penn State was playing defense, they were kind of pulling a page out of Buzz Williams' book. They were stacking the paint, putting a lot of bodies in there, and they're also just really good defenders. Early in the game, they were running their set called horns, which they can run a couple different wrinkles out of it, but one of them is to run 2 guards around the backside and get both of them on double picks from 2 of the forwards. That either opens up a 3-point shot or should then clear out a whole lot of the defense to one side of the floor and open up a lane to dribble down the middle. Well, every time they got the ball, they switched off those screens quickly, and it seemed like whoever took the handoff from the screen had no room to dribble penetrate. And there really wasn't much of a roll off of there. The guy was trapped right off of there, so it wasn't like he was going to be able to make a pass off the roll, and then he had to pull it back and start the offense all over. They just were playing good defense against dribble penetration, and A&M couldn't find any. And I think that was a big part of the loss because Penn State had a historic night shooting. I mean, 13 of it was 13 of 22 from 3-point. Andrew Funk, the guard, 8 of 10. 8 was the most 3-pointers a single player has shot against A&M this season. It also ties for number 2 all time against A&M in their record book. And the most threes they'd given up by a team this year was 10 in that blowout loss to Colorado early in the season. So you can talk also a lot about the way A&M's offense looked inept, but anytime you have a team going 13 for 22 from 3-point line and a guy going 8 for 10, that's hard. That's gonna be hard to overcome anyway. And we could talk a little bit about the defense too. A&M's defense, there was problems there as well, but so much of that was what Jalen Pickett was doing and the kind of player he is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but that post up kind of back down type of style Pickett does. I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of the old guy at the YMCA pickup game, is it not? Just
gosh. Yeah, I mean, he was just so savvy with the ball. It was like whatever A&M did, it didn't matter because he was going to find a way to either create a shot, which most often than not he made, or he was going to be able to find an open shooter. And like you already mentioned, Travis, Penn State was just scalding hot on the offensive end last night. I mean, it seemed like they couldn't miss.
Here was the difference between Pickett and most of the guards that A&M faced here. He was strong because, with some of the quicker guys, there's a couple of different guys that A&M could put on them defensively. You could put Dexter Dennis on him. You could put Tyrese Radford on him. You could even put Wade Taylor on some of those guards because he's pretty quick. And his steal percentage, he can force some turnovers. Wade Taylor was nowhere near close to strong enough to be able to guard Pickett because he would just back him down and push into him and push him all the way to the basket and then have an easy turnaround layup or kind of hook shot. And then then that made A&M try to pick. Once Funk got hot, they moved Dexter Dennis over to Funk and then had to pick who they wanted to put on Pickett. Sometimes it was Tyrese Radford, who Radford almost wasn't even strong enough to defend him one-on-one. Sometimes they got switched off and it was Wade Taylor. And in those instances, then they had to bring help over, whether it was Henry Coleman or whoever the low man was. And that opened up either a shot from the outside with whoever was standing out there or a little dish pass to the weak side of the basket and an easy layup. I mean, it was a really well done defensive or offensive strategy that was just a bad matchup for A&M.
You know, Travis, you've already gotten into the nitty gritty of it. I think anyone going into the game knew that this could be a challenging matchup for A&M just on paper, looking at it. And when you play in the NCAA tournament, everybody talks about how matchups are so critical. Just were you surprised maybe that A&M looked so discombobulated on both ends of the floor for most of the game?
Not really, because as we said, it was just a bad matchup for A&M. The question was asked after the game, actually by Kirk Bowles, the Austin American statesman, was Penn State, a lot of talk about A&M being better than a 7 seed. Was Penn State better than a 10 seed? Their record pretty much proved that was where they should be, their analytics and everything. But that's one of the best 10 seeds I think you'll see in the field with the way that they're able to shoot the three, with the way that Pickett is able to distribute. And frankly, of all that 3-point talk, the way that they play defense, I think their defense, the way they played that, had dictated more about A&M's inept ability to do really anything than anything else on the floor, because they completely negated A&M's ability to dribble, penetrate, forced them to shoot from the outside. And A&M isn't a great outside shooting team. So I'm not surprised. And I leaned over and told some of the people sitting around me early in the game, if Penn State comes out and hits a couple threes early, it's over, because A&M can't keep up with that style of offense.
Well, Travis, I think a lot of people are going to look at this last game and kind of, have a sour look at A&M's season based on, maybe some of the potential or the expectations going into the tournament. Well, how do you look back on this season and kind of evaluate whether it was a success or not?
I think, of course, expectations and evaluations change as seasons go and play out. But I think really and truly the main expectation of this season for A&M and A&M's fans was just to get back to the NCAA tournament. And I think that's what anybody would have said a success was when the season started out. I think expectations probably rose a little bit with what A&M was able to do through conference play and the kind of team they presented to be. But ultimately, when you look at what the expectation was for the season, it was to make the big dance, and A&M made it. So I think that you have to say the season was a success, especially when you then go back and look at the fact that they finished second in the SEC. They won more games in the SEC than any team since 2012 when they joined the conference. They finished second in the SEC tournament and returned to the finals for the second year in a row. Everything about this team from January on, come save yesterday, was overachieving. And so I think that you have to say that was a really big success. And you can look at some of the individual development. Wade Taylor went from a role point guard last year to an all SEC player and on the verge of an All-American this year. That's huge development. Julius Marble turned into a completely different player this year. Dexter Dennis turned into a completely different player this year. Tyrese Radford has continued to grow. And I mean, you look at a guy who at Virginia Tech couldn't hit a 3-pointer. And now he's able to have a really well-rounded offensive game. And like a guy like Anderson Garcia, who was just a low number average kind of guy, came in, was pretty much 6th man of the year for A&M, and oftentimes was their best rebounder and forced Buzz Williams' hands to keep either Henry Coleman or Julius Marble off the floor at times because he was just making such an impact. So you look at those little individual developments and how players have grown from last season to this season. I think that bodes well for the future, and I think that is another mark of success in the program.
Travis, if you were kind of giving out an accolade, who do you think A&M's MVP of the season was?
I think the easy one, of course, is Wade Taylor. He, put up great numbers, the high scorer, all SEC player, everything like that. But man, I think it would be tough not to include both Dexter Dennis and Anderson Garcia in that conversation. I told a lot of people, Wade Taylor's going to be your points production. He's going to be your point guard. But if you really want to kind of get a feel for how A&M as a team is doing, you look at Dexter Dennis. How is he playing defense? How is he getting rebounds? Is he getting a little bit of point production? Because that's icing on the cake usually for A&M. And so I probably would have to hand it to Dexter Dennis, but Anderson Garcia really could make an argument as that as well, because I think his emergence once conference play got here, especially in his ability to rebound, because that's so huge in the way A&M plays. And I mean, look at it. If you go back and look at the second half of the conference season, A&M was not a good shooting team from the field, but the way that they were able to stay in these games and win them was to get to the free throw line, make free throws, and get offensive rebounds and high percentage second chance points. And that's what helped keep them in games. And Anderson Garcia was a huge part of that. So any one of those three guys, I think, it could have a say in best player of the season.
So you're telling me Andy's coming for the MVP?
I mean, well, you talk about that development too. If they can work with him to get a little bit more of a scoring presence next season, I mean, think about the kind of player that he could be. He could be pushing Henry Colin or Julius Marble for a starting position. And if you kind of look at Henry's inability sometimes to handle the ball in pressure situations, I mean, you get a scoring presence with Anderson Garcia. Like I said, he could be pushing one of those guys for the starting forward position.
Well, Travis, A&M season ended on a low note. What was maybe the high of the season in your opinion as they went through that run?
I mean, I think you got to say it's the home season ending win against Alabama. The hype that was around the game, you had people camping out all week. If Auburn would have beat Alabama the week before, that would have been playing for the conference title. You got to think College Game Day would have been there. It would have been where the kind of the center of the college basketball world was revolving around, and they ended up pulling off the win. So I think that was the culmination of everything that had been building all season, and what a lot of the conversation was around when they hired Buzz. Were they going to get A&M back to prominence in the SEC? Were they going to get A&M back to the NCAA tournament? And were they going to get butts and seats in Reed Arena? Because for so long, those games have been empty, and now you have kids camping out. And so it'll be interesting to see how that momentum moves moving into next year, because going out, I talked to a lot of the kids who are camping out, talking to students who are coming to games and stuff. So many of them are freshmen who this is their first real experience with college basketball on campus. And now the expectation is they're going to be good, they're going to be likable, and they're going to make NCAA tournaments. And as long as they kind of keep that mold, is that going to keep student interest strong in A&M basketball? That's going to be one of the big points to watch next season.
Yeah, let's kind of shift gears and we'll kind of close with a few questions around the future. Just, it's kind of interesting to look at the trajectory of where A&M's program's gone the last 2 years. I mean, this time 2 years ago, basketball was kind of dead in the water after kind of a shaky season riddled by COVID issues. Last year, of course, took a step forward. This year, finally, with the breakthrough, the NCAA tournament. Where do you kind of see this program heading as A&M moves forward into Buzz Williams? What will be his fifth season?
The good news for A&M fans is the only player that they lose is Dexter Dennis, barring any transfer portal activity. So you get Wade Taylor back in his all SEC performance. You get both your post Henry Colin, Julius Marble back. You get Anderson Garcia back. You get Boots Radford back, who is a senior, and Andre Gordon, who both are seniors, but appear to be exercising that extra COVID-19 season, fifth year season, heading into next year. So you get more development time for those guys. I think, like I was talking about, Anderson Garcia's development is going to be huge. Wade Taylor's development is going to be huge, and how he handles adversity, how he handles when he does get up against where he's not the fastest, best guy on the floor, and how he can take his game to the next level. And then Manny Obaseki is a guy that early in the season, you know, Buzz always said that they have to have either Tyrese Radford or Dexter Dennis on the floor at all times for their system to work and to have that defensive presence that can also score. Manny Obaseki is the kind of heir apparent to being that guy. He's really athletic, and you saw at times, even though he was injured for most of the season, his athletic ability forced Buzz to get him back on the floor, even though he wasn't completely sure in the way that their offense and defense had changed over the season. And he made an impact in the Alabama game, and he made an impact in the Penn State game. Honestly, I thought coming out of the second half, they probably should have pulled Henry Coleman out of and given some of those minutes to Manny Obaseki and had Manny and Dexter on Pickett and Funk, and let almost face guard those two guys with those, because they had the athletic ability and the strength to do that. Dexter probably on Funk and Manny Obaseki, because they did that a little bit at the end of the first half and it was successful. Now the give and take there is you're not going to have the same kind of potential for offensive production as Henry Coleman has with Manny Obaseki, but another guy that could maybe dribble, penetrate, and get to the hole. So I think his development is going to be really huge to try to fill a little bit of that void that Dexter Dennis is going to leave as being that lead defender. And then Solomon Washington too. He's a little bit longer. He can play against those guys, but he's kind of that guy who can defend down in the paint, but also get out and get a hand on perimeter shots. All of those guys are going to be huge. And then, of course, this is college basketball. There's going to be guys that leave. There's going to be guys that come in via the transfer portal. It does seem like 60% of the rosters usually change over in most SEC. So they're going to probably lose a guy or two, add a guy or two. And it would be great to see if they could get another shooter in there, because it's kind of what failed them at the end of the year, and to see where they go in that regard moving forward. So everything is in place. They're going to have they should have a veteran lineup moving into next year. And as you look and watch March Madness unfold right now, and some of these lower seeded teams beating the higher seeded teams, it has a lot to do with experience. Even though they play in lesser conferences, have a lesser strength of schedule, are a lower seed. Usually they're really senior heavy, really experienced teams. And a lot of times experience can just beat out raw talent. A&M will be poised to have both talent and experience next year, not only just in college basketball, but in Buzz's system. And I think that bodes well for the Aggies.
Something that, I'm curious to see if it unfolds is, from a resume standpoint, one of the reasons it seemed that A&M got knocked down maybe to a 7 seed was non-conference play, non-conference strength of schedule. Buzz made some moves to try and bolster what they could this season's non-conference schedule, and it still wasn't quite enough. It's probably a little too early to tell, Travis, but do you think that they're going to maybe try and make a couple more moves to maybe try and get 1 or 2 more marquee games on the slate early in?
Yeah, Buzz has already said as much. Last season, late in the progress, they dropped 3 games that were going to be quad 4 type games and replaced them with Boise State, which ends up being a tournament team. I believe Memphis or DePaul and SMU. The problem with strength of schedule and non-conference right now is that with the transfer portal, you don't necessarily know what a team is going to be year to year. You don't know if they're going to get that, because one impact player can make all of the difference. I mean, look, Jalen Pickett for Penn State was a transfer. Dexter Dennis for A&M was a transfer, and that changed the makeup, the ability of that team. And so you don't quite know what a team is going to be season to season. So Williams said they went ahead and kind of followed the model of last year, but instead of canceling games, they've left 3 slots open right now, as they're going to analyze and try to figure out what the landscape looks like and try to fill those with 3 higher ranked, higher potential net teams to help bolster that non-conference slate. But it does seem, with how much Buzz talked about the lack of transparency that he feels that there is in the seeding and the selection process, that they are going to do some analysis and get some numbers to back up their take on scheduling, and their take on how they approach the season. in aims to getting themselves in the best possible situation for the NCAA tournament. So I think there is something there. I think they are going to look at that non-conference slate, and they're already being proactive on that in leaving 3 dates open to try to fill those later in with teams that they think could help bolster that resume a little bit more.
Well, Travis, you got any closing thoughts as we wrap a bow on our coverage of this A&M men's basketball season?
The biggest thing that needs to change from this year to next year, as I think we will continue to be covering NCAA tournaments with the A&M men's basketball team, is the stupid cup rule at NCAA. Are you aware of this? The cup rule?
Cup rule?
And I can't be look a gift horse in the mouth, because they have all of these sodas and snacks for us in the media room, and that's great. You can go in and grab a free Coke Zero, crack it open, drink it at any time you want. Fantastic. But because of weird sponsorship things, there's all these stacks of blue NCAA cups by the entrance, and you have to pour the entire contents of your can into the cup and carry that out to the stadium with you. And like, you're on the front row. I'm always so worried that a basketball is going to fly in, knock over the cup, spill all over my laptop. It happened to the Express News' Nick Moyle today, spilled a cup of soda. Like, here's my take. A little media gift, little cheap plastic cup with the top on it. Give it to all the media members and say, here's your cup for the day. And then you can put some kind of branding on it. You can get it sponsored. You can get it paid for. And then everybody can just put it in the cup, and it has a nice little top on it, little sippy cup for us babies. And that way we can't spill it all over our laptops, and it'll be great. That's all I have to say. That's my one critique of the season and the NCAA tournament.
Buzz is going to get data about the selection committee process. Travis is going to get data about Media Pro Cups.
Serious cup data. It's coming.
Big J journalism, folks.
I'm going to have a paper packet next year with all of cup stats and hand it out to everybody.
Travis, you done a great job covering A&M men's basketball this season. I enjoy getting to talk with you. Safe travels home from Iowa. And hey, A&M baseball, they're hosting number 1 LSU this weekend, and spring football starts Monday. So we'll be rolling right into the next line of thought.
It never stops.
It never stops. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Aggie Nation Podcast. Be sure to check all of Travis's coverage on A&M's run in the NCAA tournament at theeagle.com. And until next time, we'll see you.